The palace of XYH Prime had never been this quiet. The great hall was built for noise, heavy footsteps of armored guards, the sharp voices of nobles, the deep hum of alien technology. But now, silence pressed down like a weight. Tall crystal pillars reflected cold blue light. Golden banners of the Empire hung without movement, as if even the air was afraid to breathe. At the center of the hall stood a human. He did not belong there. His name was Elias, though no one here cared enough to ask. To the Empire, he was only the human. A guest, a helper, a temporary presence. Someone who would leave once his task was done. Elias stood straight, hands relaxed at his sides. He wore simple dark clothing, clean but worn. His boots were old. His face showed calm, but his eyes watched everything. Years of hard life had taught him one thing. When a place becomes as quiet, something is about to happen. At the far end of the hall sat the alien queen. Queen Velith ruled over dozens of star systems. Her skin shimmered like silver under moonlight. Her eyes were sharp, ancient, and empty of warmth. She was known across the galaxy as the Unbroken Queen. She had not smiled in over a decade. Some said she had forgotten how. Beside her throne stood guards in black armor, weapons ready. Around them sat nobles, generals, and scholars. All of them watched Elias with hidden suspicion. A human in the royal hall was rare. A human this close to the throne was dangerous. The queen had summoned Elias to ask questions about a distant border world. Nothing important. Nothing emotional. Or so everyone thought. Then it happened. A soft sound echoed through the hall. Not footsteps of a guard. Not the voice of a noble. It was the sound of running. Small, fast, unguarded. Several heads turned at once. From behind one of the pillars, a small figure appeared. She was young, too young to be in this hall alone. The princess, the queen's daughter. Her skin glowed with a softer shade of silver. Her long hair floated lightly behind her as she ran. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with something else. Recognition. Shock spread through the hall like fire. "Where are the guards?" someone whispered. Weapons lifted. Alarms were seconds away. The child ran faster, straight toward the human. "Stop her!" a guard shouted. Too late. Before anyone could move, before the queen could even stand, the princess reached Elias and hugged him. Not lightly, not carefully. She wrapped both arms around his waist and pressed her face into his chest as if she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. The palace froze. Weapons stopped midair. Nobles rose halfway from their seats and then froze. A dozen guards aimed their weapons at Elias's head. Elias did not move. His body went stiff, not from fear, but from shock. He looked down slowly. His hands hovered in the air, unsure where to place them. The child held him tighter. "You came back," she said softly. Her voice echoed through the hall. Elias's breath caught. I don't understand," he said quietly. The queen stood. Her throne scraped against the floor, the sound sharp and loud in the silence. Her eyes were wide now, not with anger, but with something far worse. "Fear! Get away from him," the queen ordered. The princess shook her head. "No," she said. A single word. Strong. Certain. The nobles began to whisper. "That is impossible. She has never touched anyone like that. She hates humans." The queen stepped down from the throne, her movement slow and controlled. Every step felt heavy. "Child," she said, her voice low, "come to me." The princess finally looked up at Elias's face. Her eyes filled with tears. "You said you would come back," she whispered. "You promised." Elias swallowed. "I've never been here before," he said honestly. "I swear." The princess shook her head again. "I remember you," she said. "You carried me. You were bleeding. You were warm." A sharp breath escaped the queen's lips. She stopped walking. The words hit her like a blade. Memories stirred, blurred, painful, buried deep. A battlefield. Fire. Darkness. Blood. A human shape fading into smoke. Impossible. "Scan the human," a general demanded. "Now." Several devices activated at once, blue light washing over Elias. The princess screamed. "Don't hurt him." She turned and stood in front of Elias, spreading her small arms as if she could shield him. Every guard hesitated. No one in the Empire had ever seen this. The Queen raised her hand. All scanning stopped instantly. Her eyes never left the child. "Why him?" the Queen asked quietly. "Why would you run to a human?" The princess looked back at her mother. "Because he is not afraid," she said, "and because he feels safe." Silence fell again. Elias felt his heart pound. He had survived wars, hunger, and empty space, but this moment scared him more than all of that. "I don't know who you think I am," he said carefully, "but I would never hurt her." The Queen studied him. She searched for lies. She found none. Something inside her chest cracked. Just a little. "Take the princess to her chamber," the Queen ordered at last. The princess refused to let go. "I'll see him again," she said. It was not a question. The Queen closed her eyes briefly. "Yes," she said. "You will." The guard gently led the child away. She looked back over her shoulder the entire time, her eyes never leaving Elias. When she was gone, the palace felt colder. The Queen turned to the human. "Who are you?" she asked. Elias met her gaze. "My name is Elias," he said, "and I think I'm in the wrong place." The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she spoke words that made every noble gasp. "Oh," she said slowly, "you are exactly where you were always meant to be." Fire above the palace, unseen by all, ancient systems awakened. Because that hug, that impossible hug, had just changed the fate of an empire. The doors of the royal hall closed with a heavy sound. Elias stood alone at the center now. The warmth of the princess's hug was gone, but the silence she left behind was heavier than before. Guards surrounded him in a wide circle. Their weapons were lowered, but only slightly. Every eye in the room watched him as if he were a living weapon that had just activated. The alien queen returned to her throne, but she did not sit. She remained standing. That alone terrified the nobles. "Begin the inquiry," Queen Velas said. Her voice was calm, but it carried an edge that made even seasoned generals stiffen. A tall official stepped forward, his skin marked with glowing symbols of rank. "Human," he said, "state your origin." Elias lifted his head. "Earth," he answered. "Outer colonies after that. Mostly supply routes. Medical work." Murmurs spread through the hall. "Medical," someone scoffed. "A human medic does not walk freely into an imperial palace." "I didn't walk in freely," Elias replied. "I was summoned." The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "By whom?" she asked. Elias hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted. The message was unsigned. It said my presence was required. I assumed it was a mistake. That answer did not satisfy anyone. A general stepped forward. "Scan him again," he demanded. Full biological and genetic sweep. Before Elias could respond, a cold voice cut through the air. "No." The Queen. All movement stopped. "I will not have my palace turn into a butcher's hole," she said. "Not today." The general bowed reluctantly and stepped back. The Queen descended from the throne once more and walked slowly toward Elias. Each step echoed. "You claim you have never seen my daughter before," she said. "Yes," Elias answered. "I swear it." "And yet," the Queen continued, "she ran to you as if she had waited years." Elias looked down at the floor. "I don't have an explanation," he said. "But children don't fake fear, and they don't fake trust." That answer struck something deep. The Queen studied him again. His posture, his breathing, the way he did not flinch under her gaze. "Search the archives," she ordered. "Every record, every battlefield, every human presence near Imperial space 15 years ago." A scholar nodded and rushed away. The nobles whispered louder now. 15 years. That was during the border collapse. The Queen disappeared for days during that war. Elias's head snapped up. "Disappeared?" he asked before he could stop himself. The Queen's eyes flashed. "That is not your concern," she said sharply. Elias bowed his head slightly. "Understood." The Queen turned away from him and faced the hall. "Until the truth is known," she declared, "this human remains under Imperial protection." Gasps erupted. "Protection!" a noble shouted. He is a threat. Then so is ignorance, the queen replied coldly, and I will not rule in the dark. Guards escorted Elias out of the hall, but not to a cell. Instead, he was led through long corridors of crystal and light into a quiet chamber overlooking the stars. The door closed behind him, not locked, but guarded. Elias exhaled slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. What did I walk into? He muttered. Minutes later, the door opened again. A royal aide entered, followed by a familiar small figure. The princess. She ran inside before anyone could stop her. Elias stood instantly. Hey, he said softly, dropping to one knee. You shouldn't be here. She smiled. You're real, she said. I was afraid they made you disappear. I'm still here, he replied. She stepped closer and looked into his eyes with serious focus far beyond her age. Do you remember the fire? She asked. Elias froze. What fire? He asked slowly. The big one, she said, when the sky was red. A sharp pain sparked in his head. Images flickered. Smoke, screams, burning metal. A woman's silver hand gripping his arm. A child crying. He swallowed hard. I've seen many fires, he said carefully. I don't know which one you mean. She frowned. You were hurt, she insisted. You carried me anyway. That was when Elias knew. Something had been taken from him. Not erased, but buried. The door opened again. The queen entered. The princess turned instantly. Mother, she said, he remembers more than he thinks. The queen's expression tightened. Leave us, she told the guards and aides. They obeyed. Only the three of them remained. The queen faced Elias directly. If you are lying, she said, the empire will destroy you. Elias met her gaze. If I am, he replied, then I deserve it. Silence stretched between them. The queen finally spoke again, quieter now. 15 years ago, she said, I was ambushed during the border collapse. My escort was killed. My ship destroyed. Elias's heart began to race. I woke up days later. The queen continued, alive. My daughter was born months after. She looked at him. No human should have been there, she said. No one survived that sector. The princess reached for Elias's hand. But he did, she said simply. The queen closed her eyes. For the first time in years, her voice trembled. Then, she said, you are a man who should not exist. Far beneath the palace, ancient systems finished their scans. And deep within Elias's mind, memories long asleep began to stir. Memories that would soon change everything. Night fell over the imperial capital, but the palace did not sleep. Light moved softly through the crystal walls as stars drifted beyond the windows. Deep inside the palace, Queen Vila stood alone in her private chamber. She faced a tall window, her reflection faint in the glass. For 15 years, she had ruled without hesitation. For 15 years, she had locked her past away. Now it was knocking at her door. Behind her, Elias sat on a simple chair. Guards waited outside, far enough to give privacy, close enough to kill him if ordered. The princess rested on a low couch, watching both adults with quiet focus. The queen spoke without turning. You said you were a medic, she said. Yes, Elias answered. Field work, crisis zones. The queen's fingers tightened slightly. Describe the border collapse, she commanded. Elias hesitated, then nodded. It was chaos, he said. No clear sides. Ships falling from the sky. Civilian convoys caught in the crossfire. I was stationed on a medical transport near Sector 9. The queen turned slowly. That sector was declared dead, she said. No rescues. No survivors. I know, Elias replied. But someone sent out a weak distress signal. Not military. Personal. The princess lifted her head. That was you, she said, looking at her mother. The queen did not deny it. Elias continued, his voice steady. I followed the signal. Found a crashed ship buried under fire and ash. Most of it was gone. The room felt smaller. I found you, he said. The queen's breath caught. You were unconscious, Elias went on. Badly injured. Your armor was shattered. I didn't even know who you were. And the child, the queen asked quietly. Elias looked at the princess. There was a small life sign, he said, barely detectable. I almost missed it. The princess's eyes shone. You held me, she said softly. Elias nodded. I carried you both out, he said, through fire, through falling debris. My ship took heavy damage. The queen closed her eyes. Images pushed against the walls of her mind, flashes she had refused to see. A human silhouette, strong arms, warm blood on cold metal. I don't remember, she whispered. I chose not to. Elias lowered his gaze. I was injured too, he said. Shrapnel, head trauma. After that, things get unclear. The queen turned sharply. You lost memory, she said. Yes, Elias answered. Pieces, faces, time. The princess slid off the couch and walked to Elias. She placed a small hand on his chest. You always look tired, she said, but kind. Elias swallowed. The queen watched them. Her voice grew quieter. When I woke, she said, my advisors told me the enemy had fled, that my survival was a miracle. She paused. They told me humans were nowhere near the sector. Silence followed. Someone lied, Elias said. Yes, the queen replied, and I let them. Her hands clenched. I needed strength, she said. Not doubt, not softness. The princess looked up at her mother. You forgot him, she said simply. The word struck harder than any accusation. The queen turned away, shoulders tight. I buried the past to protect the future, she said. Elias stood slowly. Sometimes, he said gently, the past is the future. The queen faced him again. If you saved me, she said, why leave? Elias hesitated. I stayed until your people arrived, he said. Then they told me to go. They said the queen would not want a human witness. The queen's eyes darkened. They were wrong, she said. A chime sounded softly. A holographic console lit up on the far wall. Memory scan results ready, a mechanical voice announced. The queen stiffened. Play it, she ordered. Light filled the room. A shaky image appeared, battle footage from years ago. Smoke, fire, screams. Then a clear moment. Elias, younger, blooded, carrying the queen. Then another frame. Him holding the child close, shielding her with his body as explosions raged. The princess gasped. That's you, she said. The queen felt her knees weaken. The truth stood before her, undeniable. The room fell silent as the recording ended. The queen turned away, pressing her hand to her chest. I was saved, she whispered, by a human. Elias spoke carefully. I didn't do it for an empire, he said. I did it because you were alive. The queen turned back. Her eyes were wet. That alone shocked the galaxy beyond measure, if anyone had seen it. This truth cannot remain hidden, she said at last. The princess smiled faintly. You remembered, she said. The queen knelt in front of her daughter. Yes, she said softly. And now, the empire must remember too. Far away, in dark corners of the palace, others watched the data stream end. And not all of them were pleased, because the queen's forgotten past had just become the most dangerous truth in the empire. Morning light entered the palace like a warning. The truth had spread faster than anyone expected. By the time Elias was escorted back into the great hall, every seat was filled. Nobles, generals, scholars, and envoys from allied systems crowded the chamber. Above them, floating platforms carried observers from the Galactic Council. This was no longer a question. It was a trial. Elias walked forward calmly, hands free, guarded on all sides. His face showed no fear, but his heart beat hard. He had faced danger before, but never judgment from an entire empire. At the far end, Queen Vila sat upon her throne. She looked composed, regal, cold. Only her daughter, seated beside her, showed emotion. The princess's eyes never left Elias. Begin, the queen said. A council speaker floated forward, his voice amplified across the hall. Human Elias of Earth, he announced. You stand accused of interference with imperial bloodlines, unauthorized presence in restricted war zones, and manipulation of a royal heir." A wave of whispers followed. Elias remained silent. "How do you answer?" the speaker demanded. Elias lifted his head. "I save lives," he said simply. "Nothing more." Laughter echoed from one section of the hall. "A human claiming innocence," a noble sneered. "You expect us to believe this was chance?" The princess stood suddenly. "No," she said clearly. "It was kindness." The room froze again. "Sit down," a general ordered. The queen raised a hand. "Let her speak," she said. The princess looked around the hall, small but unafraid. "He carried me when my mother could not," she said. "He was hurt. He did not leave." Her words were simple. They were devastating. The council speaker shifted uncomfortably. "Emotion does not replace law," he said. "Then your law is empty," the queen replied sharply. Gasps spread across the hall. The queen stood. "For 15 years, she said, I ruled without knowing the truth of my survival. That ignorance was not an accident." She turned to the nobles. "Someone here raised a human from history." Murmurs turned into anger. A general stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said, "even if a human saved you, his presence threatens stability. Empires do not forgive weakness." The queen's eyes hardened. "Saving a life is not weakness," she said. "Fearing the truth is." She turned to Elias. "There is one final test," she said. Elias nodded. "I understand." The council speaker raised a hand. "A full memory reveal," he declared. "Open to the whole." The princess looked frightened. Elias met her eyes. "It's okay," he said softly. The device activated. Light surrounded Elias. Images flooded the air above him. The battlefield returned. Fire, screams, falling ships. The whole watched in silence as the memory played. Elias pulling survivors from wreckage. Elias shielding the queen. Elias collapsing after placing the child safely inside an escape pod. No orders. No reward. Only action. The memory ended with Elias drifting unconscious into space, rescued days later by a civilian vessel. The whole was silent. Even the nobles could not deny what they had seen. The council speaker cleared his throat. "The evidence confirms," he said slowly, "that the human acted without intent to deceive or gain power." The general scowled. "But intent does not erase consequence," he said. "The child carries mixed blood. That alone will divide the empire." The princess stood again. "Then let it divide," she said. "I am not ashamed." The queen looked at her daughter with pride she no longer hid. She turned to the council. "You fear division," she said. "I fear stagnation." She raised her voice. "This human will not be punished." Outrage erupted. "You cannot." "I can," the queen interrupted. "And I will." She paused. "But this trial is not over." The whole quieted. "Because now," the queen said, "we must decide what he means to the empire." Elias felt a chill. The queen looked directly at him. "Human," she said, "do you seek title, power, protection?" Elias shook his head. "I seek none of it," he replied. "I only want the child safe." The princess smiled. The queen closed her eyes briefly. Then she spoke the words no one expected. "Then you will remain," she said, "as a guest, as a witness, as a reminder." A reminder that one human had stood when an empire fell. Far above the palace, unseen ships shifted position. Some prepared for peace, others prepared for war, because the trial of the human had ended. But the judgment of the galaxy had only just begun. The palace did not celebrate. After the trial, no music played. No banners were raised. The empire felt like a great beast holding its breath. The truth had been spoken, but truth was dangerous. Elias stood alone on a balcony overlooking the capital city. Towers of light stretched toward the sky. Air traffic moved in quiet patterns. From this height, everything looked peaceful. It was not. Behind him, the doors opened. Queen Vila stepped out, her presence changing the air at once. She dismissed the guards with a single motion. For the first time since Elias had arrived, They were alone. "You should not stand unguarded," Elias said without toning. The queen stopped beside him. "I have survived worse than words," she replied. They stood in silence for a moment. "Your memories," the queen said at last. "They are not complete." Elias nodded. "No, something was damaged, or removed." The queen's jaw tightened. "There are those in my court who specialize in such things," she said. "Memory shaping, erasing inconvenient truths." Elias turned to face her. "You think they did this to me?" "I know they did," the queen replied, "because they did it to me first." The words fell heavy between them. The queen looked out over her empire. "I remember choosing to forget," she said. "I told myself it was strength." Her hands clenched, but it was fear. Below them, a low alarm sounded, soft, distant, easy to miss. Elias's eyes sharpened. "That wasn't normal," he said. The queen did not respond. Her gaze was fixed on a small group of buildings far from the palace core. "They are moving," she said quietly. Elias followed her stare. Dark ships rose silently from hidden bays. "Unmarked. Assassins." Elias asked. "Not officially," the queen replied. "They call themselves stabilizers." Elias exhaled. "Stability usually means blood." The queen turned sharply. "My daughter," she said. Elias was already moving. They ran through the palace corridors, alarms now rising louder. "Guard!" shouted. Doors sealed and reopened as the queen overrode systems personally. They reached the princess's chamber. Empty. The window was open. Elias moved to it and looked down. A transport ship was lifting off. "They took her," he said. The queen's composure shattered. Her voice broke, not loud, but raw. "No." Elias grabbed a nearby weapon from a fallen guard. "I can reach her," he said. "You will die," the queen replied. "I won't stop," Elias said simply. The queen hesitated only a second. Then she nodded. "Take my ship," she ordered. "I will clear the path." Moments later, Elias piloted a sleek royal fighter through the palace exit, engines roaring. He locked onto the fleeing transport. The stabilizer ship fired first. Elias dodged, his movement sharp but unpolished. He was no ace pilot, but he was determined. Inside the transport, the princess pressed her hands against the window. "Elias," she whispered. The fighter closed in. Elias cut communications into the transport. "Let her go," he said calmly. "This ends badly otherwise." A voice answered, cold and amused. "You already changed the empire once, human," it said. "You won't do it again." The transport fired. Elias took the hit. Warning lights flashed. He didn't slow down. He rammed the side of the transport, matching speed, then jumped across the gap as ships scraped together. Inside, chaos exploded. Elias fought through armed figures with desperate strength. He took hits. He kept moving. He reached the princess. She ran into his arms. "You came back," she said again. "I told you," he replied. "I don't leave." Explosions rocked the ship. Elias sealed the escape pod and launched it. Then he jumped after it. The royal fighter caught them just in time. Back in the palace, the queen watched the ship's return. When Elias carried the princess into the hall, injured but alive, the empire watched. The queen walked to him slowly. She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You were right," she said. "Your memory didn't just save me." She looked around at the stunned nobles. "It shattered us." Her voice hardened. "But from broken things," she continued, "new empires rise." Far in the shadows, surviving conspirators fled. They knew now. The human was no longer just a reminder. He was a line that could not be erased. The palace burned with activity. Emergency lights flashed across crystal walls. Medics rushed through corridors. Guards sealed entrances and scanned every shadow. The failed abduction had torn open the heart of the empire. Elias lay on a medical bed in a quiet chamber near the throne room. His side was wrapped in glowing bandages. The pain was sharp, but he ignored it. Across the room, the princess sat on a small chair, watching him closely. "You're hurt because of me," she said softly. Elias gave a weak smile. "I've been hurt for worse reasons," he replied. This one was worth it. She nodded, not fully convinced. The doors opened. Queen Velith entered, her armor replaced by simple dark robes. Her face was hard, not cold, but focused. She looked older now, as if truth had added weight to her years. The stabilizers are not finished, she said. They have allies, ships, influence. Elias pushed himself up slightly. Then they won't stop, he said. No, the Queen agreed, and they will strike openly this time. As if summoned by her words, a deep alarm echoed through the palace. Not the sharp cry of an emergency, but the long, steady tone of war. A general's voice filled the chamber. Enemy fleets detected. Multiple jump signatures. The princess stood. They are coming for him, she said. The Queen did not deny it. They believe killing one human will restore order, she said. They believe wrong. The Queen turned to Elias. You should leave, she said quietly. I can send you beyond Imperial space. Elias looked at the princess, then back at the Queen. If I run, he said, they'll keep chasing. Not just me. Huh? Anyone who stands close. The Queen studied him. You are not obligated, she said. Elias met her gaze. I was never obligated the first time either, he replied. Outside, the sky darkened as massive ships appeared above the capital. Energy shields flared. Defense cannons powered up. The princess reached for Elias's hand. Stay, she said. He squeezed her hand gently. I'm not going anywhere. Moments later, the throne room filled with commanders and guards. Holograms of enemy fleets hovered in the air. They demand the human, a general reported. Alive or dead? The Queen stepped forward. Then they will receive neither, she said. She turned to Elias. Stand with me, she said. Not as a subject, as an equal. The first blast struck the city's shields. The palace shook. Screams echoed from distant districts. Elias moved to the front line beside Imperial soldiers. He took a rifle. Simple, heavy, familiar. The princess watched from behind the shield barrier. The gates burst open. Enemy troops flooded the outer halls, mercenaries, traitors, and stabilizer elites. The first Imperial line faltered. Elias stepped forward alone. He raised his weapon. Hold, he shouted. The soldiers hesitated. Then they followed. Elias moved with brutal focus. He didn't fight with anger. He fought with purpose. Every step forward became a signal. The line held. The Queen joined the fight, her energy blade cutting through attackers with controlled fury. Side by side, human and Queen pushed back the invaders. An explosion threw Elias across the floor. He hit hard. His vision blurred. The princess screamed his name. Elias pushed himself up, blood on his lip. Still here, he muttered. He took one more step forward. Then another. The enemy commander appeared at the far end of the hall. End this, the commander ordered. Kill the human. All weapons turned toward Elias. The Queen moved to shield him. Elias stepped in front of her instead. No, he said calmly. The commander laughed. One life for an empire, he said. Fair trade. Elias met his gaze. You don't understand, he said. I already made that trade. The Imperial cannons fired. The enemy line broke. Within minutes, the invading force collapsed. Survivors fled. Silence followed. Elias dropped to one knee, exhausted. The Queen approached him slowly. You stood alone, she said. Elias looked up. I wasn't alone, he replied. They stood with me. The Queen turned to the watching soldiers. They followed you, she said, because you showed them how. She extended her hand. Elias took it. Above the palace, enemy ships retreated. The galaxy had witnessed it now. Not just a human who saved the Queen, but a human who stood alone and made an empire stand with him. The battle ended, but the echo of it stayed. Smoke drifted through broken holes. Light returned slowly as emergency systems powered down. Medics moved among the wounded. Outside the palace, citizens gathered in silence, watching the skies for signs of more war. None came. Elias stood near the center of the throne room, leaning slightly on a railing. His body ached. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion finally catching up. The princess stood beside him, holding his hand tightly, as if letting go might make him disappear again. Queen Velith watched them from her throne. For the first time in many years, she did not look alone. The council reconvened within the hour. This time, no one argued about procedure. Too much had changed. Too many had seen the truth with their own eyes. A council speaker stepped forward. "The stabilizer faction has fled," he announced. "Their leaders are in hiding. Their fleets are scattered." Murmurs filled the hall. "They will not return soon," he continued. "Not after today." All eyes turned to Elias. The speaker hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Human Elias of Earth," he said, "your actions have altered the course of this empire." Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't plan to," he said. "I just did what was right." The speaker nodded slowly. "That," he said, "is what frightens many of us." The queen rose from her throne. The room fell silent at once. She stepped down the long stairs, stopping in front of Elias and her daughter. For a moment, she said nothing. Her gaze moved from the human to the child, then back again. 15 years ago, the queen said, "I survived because one human refused to walk away." She turned to the nobles. "Today, my empire survived for the same reason." Some looked away. Others bowed their heads. The queen faced Elias directly. "You were offered power," she said. "You refused." "Yes," Elias replied. "Power isn't why I stayed." "You were offered safety," she continued. "You refused that too." "I didn't feel safe leaving," he said honestly. The queen nodded. "Then hear my final offer," she said. She raised her voice so all could hear. "Elias of Earth, I offer you a place beside the throne." Gasps erupted. A noble shouted, "You cannot mean—" The queen silenced him with a glance. "Not as ruler," she clarified. "Not as consort. Not as symbol." She looked back at Elias. "But as guardian." The word echoed. "Guardian?" Elias asked. "Of my daughter," the queen said, "and of the truth that nearly destroyed us." The princess's eyes widened. She looked up at Elias with hope and fear mixed together. Elias knelt in front of her. "You don't need me to protect you," he said gently. "You're stronger than you know." She smiled. "I know," she said, "but I want you here." Elias closed his eyes briefly. Then he stood. He faced the queen. "If I stay," he said, "I stay as myself. I won't be silent. I won't lie." The queen's lips curved into something close to a smile. "That," she said, "is exactly why I ask." She turned to the hall. "From this day forward," she declared, "this human stands under my protection. Any who threaten him threaten the crown itself." The nobles bowed. Slowly, reluctantly, but they bowed. The princess hugged Elias again, this time not in fear, but in certainty. The palace did not freeze. It watched, and it understood. Days later, the empire changed. Old laws were questioned. Hidden records were opened. The stabilizers were named traitors. Worlds that had feared humans began to speak of them differently. Not as tools, not as threats, but as people. Elias stood one evening on the same balcony where it had all begun. The princess leaned on the railing beside him. The queen stood a short distance away, looking out over her stars. "Do you regret it?" the queen asked quietly. Elias thought for a moment. "I regret the years we lost," he said, "but not today." The queen nodded. "My empire was built on control," she said. "Now it must learn trust." The princess looked up at both of them. "Will you leave again?" she asked Elias. He shook his head. "No," he said, "not this time." She smiled and rested her head against his arm. Far across the galaxy, stories began to spread. Not about a queen who ruled with fear, not about a palace that froze in silence, but about the moment an entire empire stopped, because a child ran forward and hugged a human. And in that simple act, the galaxy learned something it would never forget.